Dharma journey. Siva, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Siva is a goddess of Ayurveda, and I've been following you for a while. And some of the wisdom that you kind of speak about is really, really connects to my heart. And I think so many of the listeners that will listen tonight will really kind of feel that embodiment that you share. And yeah, I know that you're an author of Ayurveda for Yoga and Students and Teachers. Is that the right book?
Ayurveda for yoga teachers and students. Yeah, the publisher was really excited to name it that because specifically, there's so many yoga teachers that have kind of dipped a toe into Ayurveda, but found it still too abstract or esoteric or full of too many rules. And they never really dive into it, even though they're kind of curious. And so this book is specifically for that audience and also to be used in yoga teacher trainings. So yeah, very clear goal that matches the title, Ayurveda for yoga teachers and students.
I love it. Yeah, I think you're in. We were just been chatting beforehand. You're in Mexico. It's like I think 5 a.m. there. So really appreciate you getting up early before the kids wake up.
Oh, I'm up at this time anyways. This is actually my favorite time of day.
Yeah, where it's nice and peaceful and quiet.
Yeah. Like you said, before the kids get up.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, I do too, especially when you're in a hot country. Like I always like to do my practices and wake up before, the birds are chirping and you feel more connected and yeah, it's just more peaceful. But yeah,
Yeah.
today I'd love to, talk a little bit about your journey into your Dharma and kind of how your background. I know you have quite a extensive background and a lot of, wisdom and not just Ayurveda and other areas too. And kind of your journey into learning Ayurveda. And I know is a bit of part of your culture too. So maybe you can share with the listeners kind of how that, I know it's probably a long story, but, in a short, sutrified way, how that kind of unfolded and what was like that point where you found Ayurveda or Ayurveda manifest in your life for a reason.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to share. It's actually really, I think, instructive about the concept of just listening and listening and listening to that inner guidance because I have videos of me at 5 years old saying I wanted to be a doctor. I was pretty clear that healing or medicine was my thing. So I was one of those students who went straight through, was candy striping at the hospital, junior high, like pre-med, bam. And I got to medical school. I was blessed to go to one of the top med schools in the States. And I had this like disillusionment where I felt like we're not healing anybody. It just felt like we're, doing things towards making people feel better in the moment, but not really healing people. Of course, there is healing that happens, with infectious diseases, especially surgeries cure things. But by and large, the majority of things that we see, we're not truly curing them. And so that left me kind of unsettled, and I couldn't really see myself, in a practice, in an office or a hospital, like with 8 minutes with somebody and like writing prescriptions all day long. I knew that wasn't really my calling. And I wanted something deeper. And actually chose psychiatry for residency because I felt like it was the only subspecialty medicine that actually attended to the whole person, like what's happening in their lives. And but even psychiatry is really very much about medication because everyone else goes to see therapists and social workers, and unless you need medication, you don't go to see a psychiatrist, right? And so then I thought, okay, look, I want to have more impact, and definitely like traditional psychiatry is not for me. So I went and got a master's in public health. And public health, I really focused on international development. So places in the world where there really isn't health infrastructure. And that was wow, because in those settings, you have the most creativity to be able to like solve things in a new way. And that's definitely a part of my personality and one of my gifts. And um, I thought that I would have more impact there, too, because there really isn't very much, and that definitely an impact junkie. Um, and then I found there was another sort of disillusionment because there's a lot of red tape, and you can go on the ground and be like, here's what the people need after I've spent like 3 weeks talking to them and getting to know their culture and what's important to them and how they think and make decisions. And then the funders, ultimately dictate what's going to happen with their agendas. And I felt like I was writing a bunch of reports that no one was reading. And, it just was like, oh, now what? Because now I have like an MD and I have a master's in public health and a lot of student loans. And what am I supposed to do now? And I just had like a quarter life crisis and decided to take a break, and I used my savings to open a yoga studio.
Wow, in America or in Mexico?
In Long Beach. It's still there actually. Not mine anymore, but still a pillar in the community, and that felt good. So yeah, I set up the first donation-based yoga studio in Long Beach
Wow.
and had my first child. And the international public health thing just wasn't so much a fit for what I wanted in my life at that time. And I was really craving to be a mother and like being more rooted in community and not on a plane all the time, and on different time zones constantly on the phone and things like that. So I think it's important to listen to um, what feels like it brings you the satisfaction and really takes avail of the gifts that you're here to share, which is sort of how I define Dharma. Um, that's kind of what led me away from medicine and away from public health. And I'd been, yoga was just something that I'd been practicing in my own world for a few years by then. So, okay, I loved it. And let's see, the yoga studio, I think, was the rooting and the nesting and community that I was really seeking. And then I started studying Ayurveda really just because my grandma passed away when my daughter was 4 months. And she came from India when I was born and spent the first few years of my childhood living with us. And, she was that sort of village midwifey plant medicine woman, amazing. And so she had 16 births. Not very many of them survived, but, it was very much about using nature as the remedies. And so I was very much raised with like, oh, you have a tummy ache, like you come home and we put the warm mustard oil in your belly button and you rub it. Or, oh, you have a headache, we use this and we do that. Or, I remember in med school, I would argue with her like, oh, Amma, it's going out in the cold is not what makes you sick. It's bacteria and viruses, like, and I didn't have the ability to reconcile the two, you know?
Yeah.
And so after having Zaya, my mom came and did all those practices for me postpartum. And I very much incorporated Ayurveda into my pregnancy as well. And then after Amma passed away, I think, was seeking to reconnect with that part of my lineage and culture and family and be able to like offer that to how I was raising my children and bringing that to my family. So I really was doing it just as a personal curiosity. And then once I had the studio, there was a pretty serious hunger, and people already knew what Ayurveda was. And I think they were excited to come sort of see me as a practitioner because I also had the MD. So they, trusted my assessment and trusted themselves um, in my guidance because of the fact that I had the East and the West, and it wasn't like just all woo woo or whatever.
Yeah.
People look at Ayurveda as, right? And so my practice took off really fast. And by the time I had my son, I moved my practice out of the studio, and I've been doing that for 12 years now.
Wow.
And I've never advertised, and it's always been full. So I think that's a testament to the fact that it works, and people's lives have really transformed. So even then, when starting the practice, I think there's a lot of people out there studying Ayurveda and wondering, like, how am I going to offer it? And it really has to be unique to you, right? So the way I practice it is different than any other practitioner I know personally. And I think as I'm guiding a lot of my clients do happen to come from various schools of Ayurveda that I teach in. And as I'm guiding them into building their own practices, it's got to be very much about who you are, what your talents are, what your passions are, what your gifts are, because that's how it's going to be genuine, right? And then that's what makes it successful. So yeah, so that's my crazy story, and here I am 12 years later. I don't call myself an Ayurvedic practitioner, but I do use Ayurveda really heavily in guiding people to sort of clean up the energetics of their lives, including the emotional, internal awareness stuff.
Yeah, maybe we can speak about that because I know that it's something you're really into. It's like psycho spiritual wellness, and maybe some of the listeners are not really sure what that is, but it's something I'm really interested in too, and how the kind of like the placebo effect and the mind body connection, and how our thoughts impact our health basically. And yeah, maybe you can link that connection for some of the people listening that maybe are not so familiar with that mind body connection piece.
Yeah, I think I might have coined the term psycho-spiritual wellness too. I haven't really heard it anywhere else.
No, I googled it and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I think
It's so
that's a
unique.
term. And the way I would describe this for everybody who's sort of new to it is every part of you that's beyond your physical. Simple, and whether you want to call that your soul, your spirit, your koshas, your place of deep inner knowing, it's that, right? So I needed a term for it, and so that's where psycho-spiritual wellness came from. And the term is mine, but the concept is ancient and across every culture, right? Like, I don't know of a culture that has an indigenous healing practice that doesn't acknowledge very clearly the link between the subtle and the gross, or the non-physical and the physical, right? So it's not a question of are they linked. It's more of the practice of how are they linked, right? And so if you have a lot of rigidity in your mind, you're going to end up with a lot of rigidity in your body. If you have a lot of excess movement and degeneration from that movement in your mind, then you will also see that in your tissues, right? So the way it trickles in is pretty easy to map in the sense of qualities and patterns. And so that's kind of how we approach it. But it's obviously not so simple. It's not like people are walking around saying, I have too much rigidity in my mind, you know, like I think this is where the art of the practitioner comes in, where you have to really get to know people and start to sense, oh, look at this. Here's this pattern that I'm seeing with the men you're dating, but I'm also seeing this in your work dynamics. And I'm also sort of seeing this with your relationship with your mom, right? And oh, look at that, bing, bing, bing. Here's this root essence pattern. So let's address that. How could we shift that pattern? Because here is the experience that that pattern is resulting in. And here is the experience that is your desired one. And so, how are we going to shift this pattern in order to augment the probability of your desired experience over your current experience? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, I think a thing that I saw the other day is like, how we have like our um yeah, we have these, I know in my life I've had it a lot, like these internal conflicts. It's like kind of like our higher mind and then our lower mind, ego, whatever you want to call it. And it's like we get to a point where we keep repeating the same patterns, um and eventually hopefully we realize, okay, this is not serving us anymore, whether it be men, whether it be food, whether it be too much coffee or whatever you're indulging in that's obviously causing conflict. Maybe you can share like some examples that you see, with women, especially. I think most of the listeners are women, and most of the women I work with are mainly females, and how this kind of shows up. Especially, I know you speak about like the reproductive issues and like the, how that's really the depletion that we're seeing, across the globe with women um, experience so much depletion from, I don't know,
Yeah.
conflicts or.
Oh my God, these are all like such juicy topics in and of themselves. Let's see, where do I start? I think internal conflict is something that is a part of being human, and it's a part of our growth process, because the moment that you have that feeling inside of, this just doesn't feel right, or this is causing me pain, or something's not feeling great here, right? Like in that moment, there's some level of awareness there. And if you keep choosing to be in the situation in the same way, then therein is the internal conflict, right? Your awareness is not matching your decisions on it, right? And when you have an internal conflict, it's going to for sure make you a vibrational match for people, situations, and experiences that feel just as off as you feel, right? And there's degrees of off. So there's people that really know that they don't want to be in a certain situation. And there's people who aren't really even fully aware of it, right? It's a spectrum. But if you take the example of, my career, and knowing that I didn't want to be there, but I think the biggest thing that keeps us in internal conflict is not knowing how to get out of it, right? So it takes a very brave spirit to say, this doesn't feel good and I don't know how, but I'm going to find something that feels better, right? And especially when you've invested so much, whether it's a relationship or a job or a community in a place that you live, right? Like it's really just our fear, and it's that unknown and not having it all figured out that holds us in those internal conflicts, right? I actually have a little master class called Resolving Internal Conflict. And I walk people through being able to really pinpoint what the conflict is and what their thoughts and belief systems that are sort of keeping them in the conflict and how to shift their perspectives and their decisions, to sort of start to move out of the conflict. And I provided some like case examples to walk them through the process, because I think, like I was saying earlier, it's a part of being human. Like there's nobody I know that doesn't have an internal conflict, right? And I have reached states where I've been like, wow, I don't have any internal conflicts at present. I feel really good about my life. And that's a really nice place to be. But like everything in life, it's cyclical. And so another sort of Siva term is the psychospiritual spiral. And I use that to teach, and it's in my book, on the emotional wellness chapter. But that's a place that's a high point on the psychospiritual spiral, and it's usually then when some conflicts come in, and it could be like you said, simply about, oh, I'm not eating very well, and I've been maybe drinking too much and having a little too much sweets or chocolate or whatever, and now my body's showing it. It could be something as simple as that brings you back to the bottom, where you realize, okay, I need to line up again, where my desires, my intentions, my hopes for myself, and my life experience, and or my awareness and my thoughts and my beliefs and my words and my actions, are all coming into play. Actually, there's a video on the website that's called Cultivating Congruency that kind of walks people through that whole alignment concept and like what it is with an example. And that's just open content. So yeah, I think that's internal conflict is something we all have to deal with, and it's a part of the growing process. And you can achieve states where you feel like you don't have any major internal conflicts, and they will come back, and hopefully there'll be more minor ones. And I think that it's a practice to know how to attend to them, because they're guiding us, right? It's really at its core, like I was saying, the deeper knowing and desire coming against the fear of the unknown, and working your way through that, right? So the better we get at recognizing when we're in internal conflict, and the more adept we are at using our tools and practices to move through them and come back into alignment, the less we suffer. So it's like less frequent, less intense, and it lasts a shorter period of time, right? So you can't have a life without internal conflict, but what you can do is diminish that sort of duration, frequency, intensity in your life with the practices, which I think is the best we can hope for, right?
Yeah, no, I know one of my teachers, Rod Stryker, he has a quote like, if we resist learning our lessons in their gentler forms, life is more than prepared to teach you in forever ending hardship. And I think some people can relate when it's like, I know I've had like little wake up calls, like kind of little smack in the face, and then it gets a bit louder and louder and louder until maybe you've had a severe health issue or a breakup, or you've lost someone or money, something like that, or something drastic's happened for you to actually like smell the roses and be like, okay, something needs to change. I'm at a brick wall here. So yeah, I get that fully. And
yeah, even when you do learn the lesson, we have our samskaras and we have our karmic lessons, right? And so oftentimes, even if you have done a big sort of self-evolution and come into those lessons, you're still going to see them pop up here and there. But again, they're gentler, and you see them sooner and you attend to them faster. And then you're like, okay, I saw you. Okay, like you're not going to get the best of me this time, right? Yeah.
And I would love to speak a little bit about like I think you said a bit about why do so many women experience depletion? Is it due to this like internal conflict that we're you know blind to? It's kind of like our shadow self sometimes. It seems.
Right. You mentioned that.
Yeah. Sorry,
So
my vata was like I interviewed my partner the other day, and he's like, "Can we not just stick to one topic? We had like 10 different topics in one in like an hour." And he's like, "It's way too much."
Well, you get excited. That's a good thing. That's a nice part of Vata is the excitement and the enthusiasm, right? So yes, I feel like not enough women are talking about this, and so it is another area of passion and um, importance for me. And that is that I don't think that enough women know that their emotional body really is directly connected to their their womb energetically. Um, and it's almost like when we talk about all this stuff in the non-physical coming into the physical, the first portal being clearly the digestive system. And we all have that. But women have a second portal, and it's the womb. And so when I'm seeing women with fertility or endometriosis or fibroids or reproductive cancers or early menopause or all of these things, there's no way to look at, or even just a tough period, you know there's no way to look at reproductive health without considering what's happening in the emotional world. Similarly, there's no way to look at digestive wellness without looking at what's happening in the emotional world, because it's incomplete, right? So it's like you can look at just the physical factors, but you're looking at like half of the picture. And so if you want a true shifting of the patterns that are happening, you also have to address the other half, right? So with depletion, what I teach is that the reproductive tissue systems are the only ones that will shunt away resources because they're not essential for survival, right? So if you're running in depletion, meaning you've got more energy that you're putting out into all the good things in the world than you do loving mushy juju coming in to like really fill your ojas tank, right? Then you're in deficit, and that deficit will be taken from the reproductive tissues, right? And so understanding that that's why reproductive cancers are like the top, and when we're looking at things like breast cancer, but not only that, just there, like that whole world for women and what's going on and what we're seeing. And wow, like the numbers are astounding. And then we look at what women are really living. And in modern urban lives, it's a very depleted existence. It's really set up for chronic disease. It's like I myself am a single mom, and to be a single mother and to run a business and to see clients and to run a household is a very common thing. And maybe not run a business, but have a job, you know, and you're like a one-man show. And how many women out there are doing that? And how many women even that are married are doing that? So these like cultural frameworks that we have where like women are also by nature such caretakers, and the giving and the guilt and the shame around self-nourishment or the hesitation or the blocks to prioritizing of self-worth ultimately, right? And these are all part of that story of choosing in a way where we sort of martyr ourselves first, always, right? Like when every mom, no matter, it's like when you get busy and you get tired, what goes first is our self-care, because the rest needs to get done, and we don't want to sacrifice the needs of our children. It's just instinctual. maybe not every mom, but the vast majority, I think, that I see, right? And a lot of women will do the same, even in their relationships before they have kids or for their jobs. Um, I know women that don't have kids but have yoga studios and have done the same thing. So it really isn't about kids or jobs or marriage or whatever. It's the pattern of how we are choosing for ourselves and our level of awareness that we're cultivating of like where how plugged in to my body and my mind and my heart am I when it's revealing to me, like in that diagram that one of the Shakti school students reproduced of my slides that I think you posted. Your body and your mind are revealing to you the qualities of of your body and your mind, and that's revealing the qualities of your life experience. And so if you're not really feeling good in those qualities, yes, there are the quick fixes like diet and oils and herbs that attend to the body, but we're going to have to at some point address the qualities of the life experience that are creating these qualities in the person.
Yeah, that really speaks to me for sure. I think often when we notice these things, kind of like habitual patterns that we've either learned or maybe they're karmic, and they keep kind of showing up. And yeah, I guess it's up to us to really want to evolve through them. And I think really is like I've heard before, like evolution is death because it is a death of an old form or pattern. um, and we really have to want that to evolve. And it's been definitely a process I've been going through the last year. So I feel that it's like that battle of like the comfort zone, but then wanting to evolve, and then staying in that comfort zone and having that fear of the unknown. And I think yeah, it definitely shows up in our body as depletion or as stress, anxiety, um, making choices that are ultimately not in alignment with our higher self and our purpose. And yeah, maybe you could speak to a little bit about my dog's growling, a little bit about, I guess, your definition of the Dharma. I know you touched before in it about sharing your unique gifts and stuff, but I would love to know your piece on purpose. Like, what is purpose to you?
Yeah, so this is something I've been thinking about the last 5 years in a slightly different way, and I'll share that with you. And then my computer might die, and I might need to get the kids up and ready for school.
Yeah.
But the the original way I used to speak about Dharma was about the gifts that you have that you're here to share. Um, like every herb, right? It's like it's got like if you look up any herb, it's got like 20 things that it has to share with us, right? But then there's like maybe two or three that it really is best at. And it's the same for us, right? Like maybe I love to cook, and maybe I um, love to mix herbs, and maybe I love to tell stories, and maybe I love to paint and blah 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 teach. But there's certain ones that are like really stronger than others, right? Naturally, and that I'm naturally more drawn to than others. Um, and so I used to really try to get people to tap into those, right? Because you can combine them in any different way. Like I could run an Ayurveda cafe yoga center, and that would be really amazing. And or I could teach and have a private practice, and or I could blah 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 blah, right? Like so what form those gifts show up and are shared in doesn't matter. It's really just that you feel you're getting validation from your experience of sharing those gifts. And you'll know because people come to you, they thank you, they appreciate you, they validate you or the experiences validate you because they're flowing and they come to you naturally, and it doesn't feel like a lot of strain, and it feels like a joy, and you don't feel exhausted and just like empty after doing it. Um, there's a caveat to that, because obviously you have to be doing your own self-care and whatever to do anything or offer anything. So, you know, that, let's assume that that's in place, right? So there's the validation you get from the people that you share your gift with, and there's the validation that you get from the universe, if you will, right? And really, when you tap into that and you pay attention to that, it will sort of guide you to what your what your path is, right? And like for me, I never planned to have an Ayurvedic practice. I never thought it was a way I could support my family. Definitely, I don't know of many practitioners that were making as much money as I was able to, um, or have client retention the way that I was able to. But that's because this was my path and this was my dharma in it, and theirs was different. Do you know what I mean? So that was kind of how I was really working with dharma, and I still do. But you know what? I also realized just being happy is life purpose enough.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I don't think we hear that enough. And I think especially all of us Pitta predominant women that like come in like wanting to help and wanting to make a difference and wanting to solve things, and wanting to make the world a better place, or you know, impact junkies like me.
Yeah.
You know, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves about that. And I think we miss that first and foremost, we're here to feel good. Like we are spirit getting to know the life experience. And yes, you need money, and yes, you need to provide for yourself. And yes, there are these practical things, but always the forefront should be that you feel good in your life. So I've recently just been kind of reminding myself and clients like, okay, let's find a life that feels really good, right? And it's kind of in my story too. If you really look at it, like I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have a long-term plan. I was just reaching for what felt good, and it led me to where I was meant to be, you know? And I know that involves a lot of faith. Um, but there's nothing wrong with cultivating a life that just feels good, because when you are feeling good, you become a wellspring of higher vibrational experiences for other people, right? So that right there is a huge gift and a huge impact, and that's really what makes the world a better place. So yeah.
Aho. Yeah, I love that. Just being alive in the present moment. I think so many of us forget that. Even me and my partner, when we're just like walking to the beach and we just leave our phones and, you know, just not leaving kind of the work stimulated mind behind, and just with our dogs and just enjoying that moment on the beach is such a simplistic thing, but often can be taken away when we're, you know, in that kind of, oh, I need to do that, I need to send that, you know. So I really love that, you know, that piece. And obviously, like the quote that I love from you is when we, yeah, when we choose high vibrational choices, we attract high vibrational experiences. And I really believe that. I really feel that. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate you having you on.
Yes, and sorry to cut our conversation a little short. We'll have to do this again some other
Yes, of
time. And
course. I know you're a mama and you've got things to do, and I know you've offered the listeners on the Dharma journey, I think 20% off your digesting life course.
yes, McKinley and I have a little workshop coming up. It's a just a mini day retreat. Spend a few hours with us and pick up some tools on digesting life emotionally and physically. So yeah, we'll. I guess you'll give them the promo code for that, and then I also have my one moon cycle together coming up, which is super. great for the women who resonated with the reproductive and wanting to know more about how to really support themselves and their emotional wellness and their reproductive wellness by tapping into moon rituals. So that might be relevant too. And yeah, I'll send you all the links to the things that we ended up talking about, and then you can share them with me.
I will. Thank you so much. Yeah, for all the witches out there, they can tap into your magic and spread the Ayurveda love. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you want to connect with us, my Instagram is @BriarRoots, @The Dharma Journey. Please feel free to send us your favorite episode, and we'd love to hear your feedback. If you want to reach and connect with me further, I offer weekly women circles every Sunday, also Ayurvedic healing programs, consultations. So all of my details are at the bottom. Thank you so much for listening. This is really a part of the Dharma Journey movement to bring us closer together, connection, community, collaboration, and really inspire one another on our path towards liberation. Thank you so much for listening. Have an incredible day. I hope. Om Gam Ganapataye